Welcome to the Portland Culinary Podcast on Portland Culinary Radio. I'm Steven Shomler, your host. Joining me today, special guest Eric Zandona. Did I get that right?
That's right.
I love it. And you work for American Distilling Institute, ADI, and you are kind of the director of an event they call Judging of Craft Spirits.
Yes.
And you are the second oldest craft spirits judging competition in the United States, and I think one of the most prestigious ones, in my opinion. And we'll talk about why I have that opinion. But how cool! And this is coming up. So the judging happens roughly in February every year.
Yeah.
And coming up in 2020, that'll be your fourth year being the director.
Yeah. So 2020 will be my fourth year running the competition. Before me, there was a man named Andrew Faulkner who ran it for most of its existence. Before that, he did an excellent job. As you said, we're the second oldest spirits competition in the U.S. and the largest craft spirits competition in the world. So our competition is primarily focused on small independent producers, and we get close to 1,000 entries every year, and so it's really great stuff.
So here's who this podcast is for. It's for people that are distillers that want to know about this competition and why I think they should send their stuff in.
Yeah.
And it's for people that are fans of spirits, because there are not the competition itself, but there are things that people can attend, that the general public can attend, which are a tremendous amount of fun that are kind of augmented and ancillary to the competition. And I think that the public needs to know about this competition, which is why I wanted to do the podcast. Yeah. But if people want to know about you, we did a podcast where we told your story, how you became a craft spirits expert and working full time, just sitting around drinking whiskey all day. That's all you do. Some whiskey and some gin, depending on the weather. Yeah. But we did a whole podcast with that. And then you've written 3 amazing books. You've edited 3 other books. They're just phenomenal. And we did a podcast on your most recent book that came out April 2019, The Tequila Dictionary. So if people want to know more about Eric, they can get that. They can listen to it. They can find out about all your books, listing of all your books and all of the articles that go with these various podcasts. But right now, we're talking about the judging of craft spirits. So roughly, how many spirits do you judge every year?
So we are now in our 13th year of the competition. And like I said, the last few years, we've been around 1,000 craft spirits. So this year was a little bit less than that. The year before was a little bit more. And so that's where we're kind of at right now. So, and like I said, most of these are small independent producers and from both the U.S. and around the world. So 3 years ago, we opened up the competition to international distillers. Now, before that, we had always had a Canadian or two enter, but we made it an official path for international producers to enter. And so we get a lot of stuff now from Australia and from England and continental Europe, but also Asia and Latin America now too.
And so some of the basic way it works is late summer, roughly. People can go to the website for the details because things change, a little bit every year. But roughly late summer, distillers can fill out their application. They can submit it, which we'll get to in a second, because that process is really, really, it's one of the 4 reasons that I think that it is, that both distillers and consumers really need to pay attention to this event and the metals that come from it. But they submit their stuff in the summer, late summer, and then roughly in February in the Bay Area, you do the competition. Yeah. I'm looking forward to checking it out 2020 behind the scenes and maybe doing some podcasts of some of the judges. It'll be a fun event. And then a month or 2 later, so late May?
Late March, early April.
Late March, early April.
We usually have our awards announcement. It takes place during ADI's Craft Spirits Conference.
So you have a Craft Spirits Conference, and you have a vendor expo, and the general public can go to that.
Yeah, that's open to everyone.
So if someone's really interested in the business side of craft spirits, that's a great event to go to. Yeah. And then during that event, you have the gala awards presentation and dinner, and the general public can buy tickets to that.
Yep, it's open to everyone.
And then what blows my mind, because I love gin, I try to make it one of my rules, is I only drink gin before noon. After 12 o'clock, I'll drink everything, including gin. But, up, from about midnight to noon is why I stick to just gin. You do a gin summit now right at the very beginning. The day before the ADI conference starts, you do a gin summit.
Yeah, the gin summit's really great because it's a full day of all things gin. We talk about how it's made and the business and marketing of it, but also we have a number of tastings during it, different sort of styles of gin, or we'll take one gin and then tweak one aspect of it and try multiple samples. And that's a lot of fun.
And then every year that location moves around, and the general public can go to the whole thing, to the summit, to the Gin Summit, to the ADI conference, to the Gala Dinner and Award. So in 2020, you're going to be in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
How fantastic is that?
Yeah.
I'm going to get myself down there. I'm looking forward to that. Again, I'll do some podcasts, and I'll try to drink a little. It's my job.
Yeah, I think there's one or two places you can find to get a decent drink in New Orleans.
And then in 2019, you were in Denver.
Yeah, 2019 in Denver. 2018, we were in Portland.
I remember, that was a wonderful event.
Yeah.
And then we don't know yet 2021.
Yeah, no, we're looking at a few different cities, but we haven't decided yet.
What fun to get to pick those different cities and go to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the judging. There's, as I think about it, 4 reasons why people really need to pay attention. One of them is the process. You don't just send in $500 and and just that's it. People have to. The distillers actually have to fill out quite a detailed form.
Yeah, we have one of the most detailed questionnaires of any spirits competition that I'm aware of. And one of the reasons that we do that is we feel like when we are sending out a group of spirits, which we call a flight, to our judges, we want to make sure that as many of the spirits in that flight are as similar as possible. We feel like that allows the judges to more fairly evaluate them together. Now, the judges aren't evaluating them against each other because each spirit is judged on its own individual quality and merit, but it helps them. Because I think it would be unfair to say send out a flight of spirits where you have one 12-year-old bourbon and one bourbon that was aged for 6 months in the same group. The judges would obviously be biased against those in an example like that. So we ask a lot of questions.
So you put it in the right pile.
Yeah, so we put it in the right grouping. Most spirits competitions, they want to know, is it bourbon? Okay, it goes into the bourbon group. They might ask about age. But that's kind of it. But we ask about what kind of still they're using. We ask about any secondary finishes they might have done, if they've added anything after the fact. And this applies for all the spirits. It applies for gin, applies for vodka and rums and liqueurs, so that we can group the spirits in the most like groupings that we can so that they can be evaluated fairly.
Why I think this competition matters so much is because, when I was doing my cheese podcast recently, down, with, like Rogue Creamery, I learned about things like commodity cheese versus artisanal cheese. And I got nothing against commodity cheese. That's where you find commodity cheese just in the dairy section,
right.
A big block. And I love a good commodity cheese, grilled cheese sandwich.
Right.
But artisan cheese, that's kind of like craft spirits.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference. And I think competitions are the same way. A lot of competitions, I'm thinking I should start one, the Steven Shomler spirits competition, and send me $300 or $400, and I will give you an award. You'll win.
Right.
And if you want gold, well, maybe send me $500. And it just because I understand why distillers want awards.
Right.
They want awards to kind of to stand out and market their stuff.
Right.
But there's a lot of competitions these days that seem to be started just as a money making opportunity.
Yeah.
As a marketing opportunity, not actually to really evaluate and and make spirits and make the spirit industry better. And those are two different kinds. I've seen a lot of proliferation of these, junk competitions. My word, not yours, but these junk competitions that are kind of just bogus BS.
In the last 5 years, there's been a large proliferation in the number of competitions. And for me, always the question is, what value do they add? I'm not going to speak badly about anybody's other competition. But we always just try and focus on doing the best job that we can. So we try to provide value for the entrants in a number of ways. So our detailed questionnaire is part of that process because we want to give each spirit the fair shake that it can when it's in front of the judges.
And put it in the right pile.
Put it in the right pile so it's judged fairly.
Yep. So that's the first reason. I've got 4 reasons I think that your competition is amazing and matters. That's the first one.
So one of the other things that we do, and this is one area that distinguishes us from almost every other. There might be 1 or 2 others that have copied what we're doing. But every spirit that gets entered in our competition gets written feedback from every judge who tastes it. Most competitions will only give you an aggregate number. You're like, oh, you averaged a 72. Why? I don't know. That's what the judges
because our unqualified judges that we picked out of a hat and drug in off the street, that's how the number they gave it.
Right. That's the average that you got.
Those were my words, not yours.
Right. So, but we want to give our entrants some feedback, and we believe that helps grow the industry.
And it educates the distiller.
Right. Yeah. And especially with, the craft spirits world has matured greatly in the last 10 years. But there was a long time where we would get spirits from people this is like their first batch they had ever made. And they wanted to get some feedback. And this is a common practice in the beer world where people, you get a new brewer and you enter a beer into a competition, you get some feedback about what you're doing right and what you're not. And that's helpful for the craft beer world, right? So we took that and we introduced that into spirits. So everybody gets written feedback. And then for those who win, they get medals that they're allowed to use for marketing their spirit. And, our judges have a fairly strict standard when it comes to medals.
Okay, so we've got I want to talk about the judges. That's the next thing. So the first thing, 4 reasons in my head. Number 1 is your entering process. Mm-hmm. You get a lot of details, so it goes in the right pile.
Yeah.
And it helps the judges later with the notes at the end. Mm-hmm. The second reason is those notes, the feedback back to detailed, helpful feedback to distillers.
Yeah.
I think that's the second reason. The third reason in my head is you use qualified judges. Oh my gosh, what a novelty.
Yeah.
Well, not just some guy that, I can judge gin. I drank a martini once.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, you have a high bar for judges, right?
We do. I mean, part of it is because we ask all of our judges to write feedback, you have to have had enough experience in the spirits world in a particular category, say whiskey or gin or rum, to be able to taste something and say, not only like, I think this is a 68. Okay, but why? Okay, here's why. And then we ask them to go the step further and say, well, what can they do to fix that? So the 2 basic pieces of feedback they get is like what's going well and what could be improved. And so you have to have enough experience in the spirits world and in that particular spirit to be able to say, here's what's going well and here's what could be made better by it. And that only comes by tasting a lot of stuff.
Not just tasting it, but tasting it intentionally.
That's right. Yeah. Intentional tasting is really because you can, I know plenty of people who drink a lot. They're not going to be good judges. So you have to do a lot of intentional tasting, which is thinking about what you're tasting, why it's there, and also knowing the process of how that was made so that you can evaluate what went right and what didn't. And so that's sort of the first bar, right? You have to have had lots of tasting experience that came from working in the industry. Right. So that means usually we take people who are writers, who are bartenders or owners, distillers, blenders, but then people who work in wholesale, retail, and import as well.
Because I can imagine, taking the next 4 or 5 years, man, I'm going to become a rum judge.
Yeah.
And I could drink a lot of rums, taste a lot of rums, learn about, go to the Caribbean, really educate myself. And the next 4 or 5 years, I probably would be qualified to be selected to be a judge at the 2025. But just because I've nailed rum, that doesn't mean I have any business judging, tequila or gin.
Right.
I would have to have a similar kind of, background and expansive knowledge in those spirits. Right.
Yeah. So it's common to see in beer and wine more sort of generalists. So you have beer and wine judges who are like, well, you give me an Italian wine, you give me a California wine, it's wine. I know how to judge it based on its, style. It's a Cabernet, it's a Merlot, it's an IPA, it's a hazy, it's a Pilsner. They know how to do that. But spirits is a little bit trickier because just because you know whiskey doesn't mean you know gin.
Exactly.
Right. So we tend to have dedicated panels. So we'll have, like this year, we had 3 whiskey panels, 3 gin panels, a rum panel, a brandy panel. And then we had our sort of catch-all stuff, and they did a lot of the liqueurs and vodkas and specialty spirits that you don't see as often. And so for those tables, we pick people who have lots of cross experiences because they're an importer, they're a retailer, and so they taste lots of stuff in different categories. And so they have experience with lots of different things.
Okay, so the process number 1, the notes back to distillers number 2. Number 3 is the use of qualified judges. And then number 4 is your whole medal process. It's very similar to how I'm familiar the Portland International Cider Cup, PICC. It's just awesome. Nat West, Reverend Nat Cider started it, and now Northwest Cider Association, runs it, and they do a magnificent job. But bottom line, we'll explain this process, what you do that's similar to theirs. But bottom line, you have medals that matter. Yeah. If someone gets a gold medal from your competition, from American Distilling Institute's, judging of craft spirits competition, that gold medal matters.
Yeah. So we have what we see in the data in terms of what gets awarded is there's a sort of broad base for bronze and silver, which is kind of to be expected to a certain degree. This reaches the bar of it's a high quality spirit. Okay, it's not, there's no flaws. It sort of matches the character of its category and class, so that's good. But then when we get into gold and then double gold categories, there's a huge drop off. So this year, I think it was less than 8% of all of our entries earned a gold medal.
And there's not a minimum you're not going to give out so many bronze, silver, gold, and double gold. So let's take really simple math, because I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but it's like a gin category. Yeah. Let's say in 2020, you only get 20 gins, and 16 of them are bad, and 4 are they're okay.
Yeah.
So those 16 would get no medals at all.
Right.
And the 4 that were okay, they would get bronze.
They would get bronze.
And in that year, in that analogy, gin category, there would be no silvers, no golds that year, and no double golds, because you didn't have anything submitted that year that fit the criteria to be a gold, or fit the criteria to be a double gold, or even a silver. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think that is such a better way to do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, our judges have experience not just in the sort of craft spirits world, but internationally. So they know what an internationally amazing gin is, or a world-class rum is, or a world-class whiskey is. So when they say this is a gold medal, they're not just saying, oh, it's good for a craft spirit. They're saying this is a world-class spirit that deserves recognition. And so, and it's represented in the numbers of how many golds that actually make it out. So, and then we have our sort of top tier, which is the double gold, which is so we have a 4-judge panel. And if all of the judges on that panel individually say, I think this should get a gold medal, I think they all say that, then they can talk does this meet the higher bar of double gold, in that is it one of the most exemplary spirits for its category and class? So is it one of the best bourbons made in the world? Is it one of the best brandies made in the world? And if they believe that meets that sort of level of quality, then it can earn a double gold.
So back to my 20 gins, 4 are okay, 16 are bad. A lot of competitions, of those 20 gins, some are going to get gold, some are going to get bronze, some are going to get silver, and some of those 16 bad gins in other competitions will get medals they don't deserve.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that your competition has medals that matter. And what's cool is that every year you post all of the listings by region, so I can find out. I love Oregon stuff. I love Oregon distilleries. I can go look at what Oregon distilleries won gold or double gold in any particular year, and then I can go find that spirit and drink it and know that I really am drinking one of the best X in the world, one of the best rums or gins or brandies or tequilas or whatever. I'm drinking best of class.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this competition matters, not just for distillers, but for consumers.
Yeah, and the good thing that we have seen too is that because we offer feedback, we have seen distillers enter year after year with gradual improvements, and maybe they didn't get a medal one year, and next year maybe they got a bronze, and they're tweaking things, and they're using the feedback that they're getting from the judges to get a sense of, am I on the right track, or do I need to reformulate the way I'm handling certain things? And we've seen people move from no medal to gold over a series of years because they've implemented some of the feedback that they've gotten.
Yeah, and by the way, you can use that for free. Gold medals that matter. If it were me, I would buy goldmedalsthatmatter.com and list them all. while, but I don't want to. I really want to emphasize that because particularly in the beer and cider world, they do that often, not always, but often in competitions where just not everybody gets a medal.
Right.
Because back to my starting one for profit, then I could be like Oprah Winfrey, you get a medal, and you get a medal, and you get a medal. Whereas your stuff, you're really sifting the wheat from the chaff, and really helping distillers make better spirits and helping consumers really drink best of.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I get passionate about it. I get excited.
Good. Yeah.
And again, consumers aren't welcome. It's a private event for the judging.
It's a closed event during the judging, but when we announce the awards, everybody's welcome.
So they can go to that conference, and then they can buy tickets to the conference and check out the business side of craft. Super fun if you like spirits.
Yeah.
They could buy a ticket to the dinner and the gala and the awards announcement.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Yeah.
And they could also, public can buy tickets to the Gin Summit, which is the day before the conference.
That's right.
And then if I don't want to go to all those conferences, fine. Just go to distilling.com.
Right.
Go to the ADI website, look at the most recent year, and look for gold medal winners for a craft distiller in your region, your part of the neck of the woods, and go drink those spirits, and you'll see that I'm completely right. Now you're having best of world-class spirits made right in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, Eric, great job. I
you.
love what you do. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about the American Distilling Institute's judging spirits competition.
Thank you.
All right, cheers, everyone.
Bye.